We are back for part 2 with Dr. Ignacio Ciampitti. Really enjoyed the conversation about some of the evolving technology.
Went quick, didn't
it? Yeah, it went really, really quick. And
we could have talked for another 45 minutes.
We could easily, I think, have a really long discussion about nitrogen, especially with everything going on. But excited to talk about management, especially coming into a difficult year. But we're going to also talk about incorporating some digital technology. But again, want to thank you for hosting us. As you've figured out by now, we're actually on Purdue's campus at the Ag Innovation Center, which is a ton of fun. So it's been a really exciting day. I am Sean Blomgren with my co-host Andrew Penney, and I am very proud of my stamp and rock collection. So
that's good to know.
That's
good to know. I always knew you had some strange hobbies. I didn't know you collected stamps and rocks.
That'd be close to probably the least strange hobby that I have, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm actually gonna give a shout out since you brought up a rock collection. So my youngest son's name is Cole. He's a brilliant young man. He's 10 years old, and he's actually obsessed with rocks.
Really, that's cool.
He absolutely loves them. So we were at what's the place in South Dakota that everybody goes to? Wall Drug.
Oh, yeah.
So we're at Wall Drug.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, you can go buy a trinket to remember, and they have a rock store. It's probably not a lot bigger. It's probably not a lot bigger than kind of the space we're using here. And it took him like 45 minutes to pick out a rock. Because I'm like, you can pick out one or two things. And I'm like, dude, we got to go. You gotta decide at some point.
You need to get one.
Oh yeah, he just couldn't. And he'll be walking around in a driveway or a park or something, and he'll see something. He's obsessed with it. So I think he's got a future in soil sciences maybe or something. So yeah, he's pretty excited about those. But I've revealed several things about myself, and so you get to learn those things, Ignacio. But yeah, excited to have this conversation. I think it's incredibly timely, especially the nitrogen piece as we're sitting here, going into fall and talking through this stuff. So Andrew, kick us off.
Yeah, I figured I'd start. Obviously, again, we're going to break up some of the management and digital technology separate. Then maybe talk about some of these, how they combined. How can we use both these technologies to understand, combine them. Thinking about the 2025 growing season, we talked about it in the first episode. We had areas that, most of the Corn Belt was wet in the spring, right? Mm-hmm. Then it started maybe getting a little bit different in spots, some drying out, some getting, continuing to stay wet. What did 2025 treat, if we're thinking about nitrogen, what did 2025 teach you, right? We have these conversations around split application, around the risk of putting all your nitrogen on the fall. What did 2025 teach you about maybe some ways to think about and recommend, different nitrogen programs to growers?
Yeah, for me, it's always a reminder of basically that we are subjected to basically what nature decides. Yeah. In many situations, if you look at the early stage of the growing season, we were in many situations way too wet. We got things planted and then we start getting wet. And if you look at those type of scenarios, basically you start thinking about, should we start thinking about a split application? And when would be the moment that, how many more growing seasons do we need to go through this issue of not seeing that most of the nitrogen in many situations might be gone? And then I think that one of the particular things, and you guys mentioned this on the first part, we haven't seen still, with all these issues and so forth, we haven't seen many fields limited by nitrogen, which was very interesting, which basically tell us that the way that we planted and the crop was just not growing that much under this wet and cold scenarios, because we didn't get too much warm until very late in the season. Most of the first, I would say, month and a half was kind of a very irregular in terms of temperature. So we really didn't get to the point of being too warm, and then the crop was just basically staying there, not growing that much. So if you look at that scenario, then I can understand why potentially that mineralization was one of the key factors for these years. Yeah. And matching that exponential growth with the available nitrogen was clear the key factor helping most of our crops this year.
Yeah, me and Sean have had a lot of conversations, whether you're in that area that dried out more specifically if you're in the areas that continue to get rain, for the growers that maybe put all their nitrogen on the fall, it could have got really ugly if we didn't continue to get rain throughout the entire growing season, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you don't know it at the time. You never know what mineralization rates are going to be. But we do know that if rain would have shut off after all that spring rain, all that nitrogen that could have leached or, denitrification could have taken place, it could have got pretty ugly with no mineralization, dry soils later in the growing season. So, I mean, that kind of saved us, but we also, at the same time, we had southern rust come in and...
Yeah.
Can I interject for a second? And this is, I apologize. I feel like you put effort into these and then I immediately just huck it out the window. So we know that nitrogen is vulnerable. We know that in the nitrate form, it moves off target. And we have a lot of ancillary ways to measure that, right? Water quality,
many other
stuff
things
like that. One of the things that I really struggle with from an advisor standpoint is the tension of a grower saying, "Hey, I'm doing the same thing I always have. My yields, continue to climb." You point at 2025 and you say the yield limiting factor was a very clear combination of some root integrity, but ultimately a disease kind of capped our ceiling. Is there any way for a grower, a reasonable way for a grower to quantify nitrogen loss? So if I put on, it's October 29th, if I go out today and I put 200 pounds on my fall anhydrous, and then we have a spring like 2025, is there a reasonable way to go out to a cornfield and say, I know I applied X, now I have Y? Because it seems to me, we talked a little bit about the modeling. It seems to me like the challenge is it's really hard to show a grower. You paid for 200 pounds. Your plant only captured X, Y, Z. We can't seem to differentiate mineralized nitrogen versus synthetic. So I'm going to hijack this right out of the gate. Sorry.
That's a good question because we all struggle with that.
Well,
so how do we think about it?
And ultimately, right, it's really hard to tell somebody you should consider changing your practice if they simply look at their trendline yields and go, I haven't really drastically changed, so you can tell me that I'm losing that nitrogen, and intuitively I can agree with you. It's relatively, it feels that way when I look at a completely saturated field, but then my corn plant doesn't necessarily show that.
Kind of goes back to our tillage episode we had from Ohio State. Right? Yeah. You might... you have all these conversations about how am I impacting my soil health, and yet my yields continue to go up, right?
Yeah, you're telling me I have a problem, and everybody feels like they're telling me I have a problem, but then I harvest the thing I'm selling, and it doesn't indicate that I have that problem. So, what's your response to that?
I mean, it's a really good question. It's complex because
it's a really good question.
There you go.
He got the 3 stars.
I got one. Yeah,
I will make a sticker.
Write that on your paper.
Next time we'll do stickers with stars.
Bring stickers next time.
So I will do like.
I agree.
But it's a very good question because honestly, it's frustrating because when you think about, can you do something with talking to the farmer, going to that field and just quantifying there? Yes, you can, but as an advisor, what can you do? As a researcher, yes, you can just go measure nitrate, water quality, put a chamber, trying to quantify N2O, looking at emissions and saying, we're losing nitrogen here, we're quantifying leaching. One of the things that, at least from my perspective, and I think that I want to find a way to keep things simple for the farmer too. That it was an idea that I have. I was talking with Dan about this the other day, that he will be here tomorrow. So, what about if we start having some, the fields, the farmers will have a sections of some of the fields that, even small, that they will not put any nitrogen. But because I feel that at some point, and this is a process of what I think that why farmers, they should be working and learning together on this. They should start seeing to believe how much is coming from the soil.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes they don't have that information.
That is, that's what Castellano's doing. So the Iowa Nitrogen Initiative, 400 some partners, I think. I'd get the information
cool research
wrong, but and they're trying to get down to kind of some determinations around the optimum nitrogen rate, right? But they're doing that, and they're basically saying if you want to have any conversation around nitrogen, you need to have no synthetically applied nitrogen blocks on your farm. Again, I think the part that's frustrating to me is if I put 200 pounds down and I raise 250 bushel corn, which is pretty common, right? How much of it's frustrating because there's no way to measure how much of that yield is attributed to that 200 pounds of synthetically applied nitrogen. And so we can prove that split application sometimes yields more, right? Like you could point to farmers and say, hey, this system is on average creating more, but
yeah. And I mean, there's been studies looking at some of that, right? You go back when years ago when you could use some of these tracer dyes, radiolabeled dyes. You know, there's been papers showing that very little of your synthetically applied nitrogen that season goes into the plant.
Yeah, and we have done a study. If you wanna just get in quickly to that, but I don't wanna deviate from the point. I wanna go back to this point of what I think that we should do a better job, and I think that working with farmers on this, and I think that farmers will respect more, is this idea of what is a soil nitrogen, what is a soil in supply. Just helping farmers to understand how much nitrogen is really coming from the soil. And to be honest, the best easy practical way that I think that we can help them and work together on this with them is to say, let's put some zero nitrogen plots. Let's put some plots, small, something that doesn't affect too much your economics, but let's start learning from your fields to understand basically, okay, how much really nitrogen, if I don't apply anything on this, can I get 200 bushels?
Yeah.
And if you get 200 bushels, so immediately you just say, whoa, so that means that I get 180, 200 pounds here. So because depending on what is the level of efficiency of, if it's 1 pound per nitrogen. But for me, sometimes we need to go through that process so they can understand, oh, wow, I never even thought about this.
Yeah.
And learning from really seeing that maybe I could produce a very similar crop. Can I do it continuously? No, because we know that every year that you do that, what is going to happen?
Right.
You're going to start eating organic matter, right? So I don't want to deviate from the point, but I have been thinking a lot about this, and I say one of the things that we haven't been very good in communicating with farmers is this point of how much nitrogen is coming from the soil.
Yeah.
We always talk about the optimal nitrogen. So think about how many times we talk about what is your optimal, what is your optimal, what is your optimal. So go back and think about how many times we talk to the farmer in all these conversations about how much nitrogen is coming from the soil.
Yeah, that's perfect. That leads into the next question. Should we assume, even if we don't know, should we assume that we're getting some nitrogen through mineralization? And if so, how much?
Yeah, we need to all the time. And that's one of the, to be honest, my personal frustration, if you want to say in some way, is that even when we know that it's very erratic, we talk about, I give an example that we have this field that we have 20 years of data, and you look at your non-fertilized nitrogen treatment and you see that your yields are all over, no? I think that it's fair for someone like me or a farmer to know what is your average nitrogen supply in this field.
Oh, yeah.
Because 1 year, as we talk about this at the beginning of the conversation, of the co-regulation between how much is coming from the soil, how much the plant is demanding. So there might be years that you have a lot of mineralization that was a wrong timing, that the plant was too young and couldn't capture, so that nitrogen basically didn't contribute.
Yeah.
But they have situations where you were able to synchronize much better, where the mineralization came maybe mid-June, exactly at the time that the plant was growing exponentially.
So if we had enough data in the area with similar soil textures where we had a good average, you think the average would be good enough to assume we should be getting that every year? Obviously, it's going to fluctuate.
I think
that would be a good number to use every year to assume we're going to get that nitrogen through mineralization.
As I talk to my students and we discuss about this, from no data to having good data or something, you already make a step forward.
Already better, yeah.
Gotcha. You're already better than before, right? Because if you want to make predictions, you could start building predictions. But in order to build predictions, you need to start thinking about, so what are the processes affecting mineralization? Can I start identifying what weather environments or conditions are moving mineralization in my field from late May to mid-June?
Yeah.
So can I start teasing that out? No, because if I know the average and I can know what is the timing on that average, then I can understand basically how to start timing my crop. No.
I want to point out that Andrew offered me was it a protein bar? Or what did you offer me earlier?
A granola bar.
A granola bar. And I think I'm getting hangry because I find myself like getting riled up in this conversation. And the thing that frustrates me in this
Should have been a Snickers, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get you some snacks.
The thing that frustrates me in this conversation is there isn't an incentive to be lean, right? Mm-hmm. So with all fertility, mm-hmm. not enough is a very, very bad day. Nitrogen is particularly difficult because of the inability to store it, obviously. But I just feel this conversation always really frustrates me because it feels like we have so few tools, mm-hmm. and the only thing is being short creates a huge penalty. And when it's a relatively, and I'm sure some farmers are going to cringe when I say this, but when it's a relatively inexpensive input, right? So anhydrous ammonia today is sub 50 cents, I think maybe even pushing sub 40 cents. You sit there and go, I absolutely know the one thing I can't afford to do is be short. And then you have this infinitely variable environment. It's just a frustrating conversation, and it's frustrating that we don't have better tools and ways to really both incentivize and reward, right? Because
those that would choose to split apply.
Yeah. I mean, and it's kind of always been my frustration with, but the way this goes is a bushel of number 2 yellow corn is worth the same price regardless of the way that it was raised. And so if you're a gross abuser of nitrogen or you're incredibly lean, you still walk to the elevator with the same thing and you get paid the same amount. And it just, I don't know. I probably should have eaten that granola bar. Maybe is my point. But we have some customers. I mean, one guy I can think of in particular that put out just an incredible set of trials this year, and I don't actually know if they did zero nitrogen, but ESN, a blend of ESN and non-encapsulated urea with a coating but not ESN, split applications, side dress in 30-inch rows with liquid side dress and 30-inch rows with anhydrous side dress, some only anhydrous, some biological products, and that grower, my guess is spent significantly more money and effort than most of the people around them. And Southern Rust came in, capped everything, and we're going to learn nothing from the data. And it's heartbreaking, right? Because it's like, gosh darn it. I mean, there you have somebody who desires to do it the best way for their own farm, but also for the environment, all those things. So I don't know.
No.
Get me off my soapbox so we don't spend the entire.
Get you a Snickers.
I would say that I share the similar level of frustration. Why I share the similar level of frustration is because when you start seeing kind of I try to put myself on the shoes of the farmer too. I couldn't be in the situation that I'm only chasing the science and I say, okay, this is the best science, a split application is the best, and why people doesn't do it.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't want to take that. I want to also understand that there is lack of incentive, that when you look at your profits and you look at how much nitrogen are you saving, it's not enough to do the trigger.
Yeah.
And I think that the questions that we have at this, I mean, at some point we have this question that there are some people that they are talking about, okay, can we be more effective? Can we reduce our footprint? And I think that we need to help, to provide incentives. And I think that the incentives needs to come, you are doing a split application, you are being a good steward of the land, so you should have some incentive on doing the good job, on making sure that you are saying, I'm not only saving nitrogen, but I'm doing it in a different way that compared to the rest. And I think that unless we establish some level of incentives, not only, and together with the technology, because for example, if I can incentivize a farmer, that I can help that to buy the equipment or to access to that equipment that is helping him to do a split and not to pay anything compared to regular practices.
Yeah.
I will do it. I will probably be doing a good job for him. I will be able to do that.
Yeah.
Let's put our management hat on, and let's say I'm a farmer that is full. I'm not hungry anymore. I have a great attitude. I'm going to ask you some questions around management. So, how can I capture more of my nitrogen? What advice would you give me? And then maybe if you would just hit on the concept of NUE.
Yeah. Remember that I think that I mean, I don't know if you were Andrew, you were talking about this isotopic nitrogen, no? At some point, some of these studies. So we have done some of these studies. In fact, most of the things that we are in some way being known is because we have these studies that we have done the last couple of years working with different companies on really tracing where the nitrogen is moving in the plant.
Yep.
Which for me, honestly, these are the best studies that I love to do because it's not only just that they are applied, but also they are research-based, are one of the best to give us some good information on, for example, this question. No, one of the studies we are looking is to apply nitrogen at multiple timings. And one of the things that is already well known, but we were able to document really well, is as you are moving to late season, the efficiency of capturing that same pound of nitrogen goes up. So early season, you might have per pound only like 25% of that nitrogen goes in the plant. As you move like a B5, it might be 30%. As you keep moving in the season, every pound that you put in the soil, that efficiency goes up. So, and we were able to get to, I think that was around B14, and then it was close to 60-70% of that pound of nitrogen went up.
It's a big difference.
So if you start thinking about in-season applications, and then nitrogen savings.
Yeah. That really makes you think, because most of the time growers would be like, nitrogen is cheap with anhydrous, I'm going to put more on, but you're only getting 25% of that.
So let me ask that question. I understand average is almost impossible because average doesn't exist anymore. But in an average year, preseason applied nitrogen, what would your answer be? How much am I capturing?
Usually I would say based on traditional efficiency of fertilizer use, probably 25-30% at the most. That's, traditionally.
I want to clarify. So you're telling me if I put on 200 pounds of anhydrous in the fall, you're telling me I'm probably actually moving 50 pounds of that into the plant. And the other 150 pounds is going Fugazi.
No, Fugazi. Usually they get, not entirely Fugazi. They usually are priming the system. So basically the fertilizer enters to the soil and priming the system. So basically
the
you have
microbiome, the carbon to nitrogen ratio.
And then you have some sort of, kind of a priming base of mineralization, and then you have some portion of that fertilizer that gets into the plant. So the rest of the fertilizer stays on, part of the fertilizer stays on the system. Not all the fertilizer goes in. But honestly, when you think about, let's do some mathematical equation if you want. So if you want to say I have a target 250 bushel crop, so you might say, okay, most likely based on different conditions, might be around 200 or 250, depending if you are in maximum accumulation of nitrogen concentration or dilution. To keep it simple, you might be on that range of uptake. So for having that range of uptake, that needs to come from the combination of mineralization plus the fertilizer. So if we mentioned before that in a good soil, mineralization could get up to 150. So the only thing that you need in order to get to your 200 to 20 is 50, 60 pounds more. So that's a piece that the fertilizer contributes, and comes through that equation.
So do you believe then that if you could run an experiment over a long enough period of time, my 200 pounds in the fall that I'm only capturing 50 pounds of, and there is an amount of that, right, that has to satisfy primary system.
It's not that you are losing that fertilizer.
So you can't say, well, then you're truly only receiving a 50-pound benefit. But then would you go as far as to say if you could run that same experiment over and over again through a long enough algorithm, then theoretically with a 70% efficiency, I could put on 60 pounds at V15 and accomplish the same yield goal? Is that
it's not linearly? That's what I was telling you. It's not a linear relationship that you
it's
say.
Not 1 pound to 1
yes,
bushel, right?
It's not like saying, okay, now I'm getting only 50, 60 pounds in, and then I can just say, oh, I will just only get only 60 rather than 200 and be 6, and I will be fine, because most of the times, I mean, you will need to have some nitrogen early season. So you cannot wait until V14 to put nitrogen. So you will need to probably put some...
Need some at V8 when that rapid uptake.
Yeah, exactly. But V8 is the moment that the plant start growing exponentially. So and that's one of the issues that we also talked to many people in the past. I have so many times, so many companies coming to us and they are saying, I want to identify a nitrogen deficiency in V5. And I say to them, good luck.
Right.
Yeah.
But not because I want to be bad. I'm just saying...
Uptake's not that.
Exactly.
Right.
And also, when you look at plants at B5, I always say, unless you are in a very sandy soil with no nitrates, with basically an organic matter level of less than 1 point, so you are basically almost very close to a beach, more than being in Iowa or being in the most productive region. So unless you are in a place that you are hungry for nitrogen, the plant will have enough for early season. So that's the problem why sometimes identifying early season deficiencies is so tough, because that plant will need only like maybe 25 pounds until V5. Super small. And that is something that can easily come from the soil, easily, with no problem. I mean, and then we have seen situations, if you think about how you can identify potentially, places that they might have response or not, we have seen situations, and when you go, like, say, in late May, that if you are doing some soil sampling and if you have a lot of nitrate, there's not going to be response. Because most of the times, I mean, high nitrate soils are kind of when you get to the rapid growth, those are scenarios that they are already telling you that your limitation is no nitrogen.
We've got to talk about digital innovation, so I do want to be careful here, but I want to ask one question, and then I know you have a question about carbon and nitrogen. So with the research that you've done on efficiency, in-season efficiency versus preseason, if I'm generally using 200 pounds of synthetic applied nitrogen, if that's my baseline application in the fall as a single application, how lean do you think you can get then if you would say, okay, I'm going to go to a primarily like, either at plant or post plant? How lean can you get that system? Because at the end of the day, the economics would say you've got to get me lean enough that I'm at least covering the delta, and then I'm believing there's some upside potential.
And that's one of the big problems. I mean, again, I will give him a star, sorry. Because if I'm a farmer, to be honest, and just
it's 2.
2 stars.
We're gonna get
2
to 3.
to 1.
We're gonna get to 3 at the end. For both.
Right.
I'm gonna be stuck at 1.
But to be honest, if I'm a farmer, the answer will be I'm gonna make sure that I have my nitrogen in. I know the price. I'm gonna lock in 200 pounds. I will keep things simple. Why I will listen to a guy that is talking about a split application and is talking about putting some nitrogen when I don't even know what the price is gonna be in spring? And why will I take the risk of waiting to spring to do a new application, or even getting into an in-season application when, in fact, I don't even know if the guy from whoever you are taking that, equipment to apply that in-season nitrogen is going to be available when the time is coming. And then just the psychological effect of the risk of missing, yield. I think that for the farmer is many times limiting to move into an in-season application. Yeah. And the other thing is that there is nothing perfect also with in-season. So you need to start at least to say, well, if my target is 200 or 200 was in the fall, okay, my potential new rate might be 150. But the way that I will do it is I will try put a 50 spring, just to get something before the planting. And then I will try to mimic, basically if I can enter 2 or 3 times, I will put a 30, a 40, and a 50. Or I will do 50, 30, 50, 40, 30, Yeah. But again, is it enough for someone to make a difference? And then what is the cost, logistical cost, to enter to the field 2 or 3 times during this season? For me, when I talk to many farmers about a split application, there are many guys that they believe on the concept. But for them, it's not enough in terms of looking at the profit and saying saving $20 is not enough, or saving $10 is not enough.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to quit hijacking your.
Are you?
No, I am right after. I say
at
this.
least for the next 5 seconds.
I am right after I say this. In our last episode with Ignacio, we talked about managing plant by plant, and then we talked about managing zones. I would really like to see growers maybe think about their farm in the sense of maybe 80% of our acres should just get a flat rate. Maybe that's the way it works, right? But maybe we should take those acres, whether it's because they're vulnerable acres, right? So whether that's because of low CEC or variable soil or whatever. Sometimes it seems like we try to eat the elephant in one bite, and maybe what we should be doing is saying, hey, what if we take either the most challenging farms or maybe the highest yield potential, right? Like kind of cater to, because it seems like we talk about these things in silos. Like we talk about nitrogen without talking about, well, what's the yield environment? What hybrid are we going to be using? How responsive would that hybrid be to late season?
I like that. You got to start somewhere, right? And so the second they can start seeing efficiencies maybe increase or yields increase on those fields, maybe they'll start adopting that.
And the economics are going to be different in 2 and 3 years, right? Like we know the economics today. The economics today are forcing us to be a little more conservative, but maybe it's a lot easier pill to swallow if we say, hey, let's pick 1 or 2 fields. Yeah, we've de-risked it. But okay, it's your turn.
And just the one last point that I think that is important is as we discussed before, that is like this is like it's almost like you're working towards getting this degree, high level degree. So why don't we start working on manage the variability first? Mm-hmm. Why don't we start working as a first step to say why? For example, we are seeing that the Precision Ag survey, the one that, Purdue is done it for the last 20 years. And if you look at the retailers, the adoption of variable rate has been going down.
Yeah.
And the question is,
this is crazy.
My question is, why? And I'm still trying to figure it out, basically. Is that coming because the retailer thinks that it's too complex to have or to offer variable rate, and it needs a new operator, it's more labor, it's more, Or is it just also because the farmer doesn't see a big benefit from doing that variable rate? Is it because he's only seeing $5, $10? But for me, before even we talk about split applications, my first step is, are you doing any variable rate? Yeah. Keep doing what you're doing. I don't care if you say, Ignacio, I appreciate you are awesome. I love your talks. But, man, I need to apply nitrogen now.
Well, but also, I promise I'm getting close. Also, the problem is, and this is, I'll speak as someone, I get paid commission on the product I sell you. And I don't get, we in agriculture, we don't pay a lot of consulting fees, right? We don't want to do that. So the assumption is if I'm going to sell you a product, my margin comes off of whatever the supply side is going to pay me. I do have sympathy for the retailers. We had a meeting yesterday before Andrew and I jumped in the truck. I met with a grower, 900 acres. Okay, so not a massive farm, right? And we spent 4.5 hours going through soil maps, and looking at dry fertility recs. And, I don't even sell fertility, right? But even think about the retailer, right? And then expand that by their volume. And so I do think there are some of the most progressive farmers we work with have recognized I need some third party, non-commissioned salespeople to be making some of those recommendations. And those are the people that we're actually seeing being more, I would say they're out on the leading edge of this stuff because they have somebody like you that both looks at the research but also has cumulative data to say, these are the impacts. I do have sympathy for an ag retailer or an ag salesperson because the time and effort that it takes to both philosophically discuss this stuff, but then actually implement it. It's robust, right?
Yeah. And also the margins. If you say how much profit the retailer is making potentially on variable rate, I think that's a question that probably we don't have an answer. Yeah. But if you look at that profit, it's so thin, that margin maybe, that then you will say, why? Why will I offer that when I see that I don't not even making money? and I'm taking a risk. I need to sit down. I need to spend 5 hours from a person, put a variable rate map. So I think that there are things that hopefully the future is going to help us to solve. But for me, it's also think about this idea of before you get into a split application, are we doing variable rate?
Right.
And then, yes, perfect. If you do variable rate, then a split application is your next step. So if you do a split application, so I think that we still need to fulfill that direction of how we can increase efficiency of nitrogen, moving a multiple, more complex management strategy, you know?
Yeah. You got any more
no,
questions?
I'm good. I'm done. I'm not going to.
Our final question on nitrogen, and this is I think is an important one because residue is a serious serious problem in a lot of the corn belt. Whether you're going corn on corn or corn on soybeans, you know, it impacts mineralization, singulation, spacing, emergence, soil temps, all the stuff that we want early spring to have good even stands. It's impacting that. So how do we need to think about, you know, as we increase yields? You know, we had Connor Sible on here from Illinois, and phenomenal guest. You know, every bushel of grain we increase comes 44 pounds of residue on average, right? And so you start thinking about the carbon to nitrogen ratio. You know, 57 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen. You know, I talk to a lot of growers, and they'll think just by chopping it up, or they have a chopping corn head, that's going to help the residue break down quicker, and it can impact it, right? But at the end of the day, it doesn't impact the carbon to nitrogen ratio.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm a huge fan, you know, and I know there's data that goes both ways, but I think we got to start thinking differently about our residue management.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of, you know, trying these products to break down residue quicker. You know, nitrogen, I like trying 32%. If we're warm and we have moisture, you know, in the fall, you know, something to feed those microbes. How do you advise growers? How do you think we need to start thinking about this? Not just the residue piece, but again, the carbon to nitrogen piece for next year, and all the residue conversations, whether it's corn on corn or corn on soybeans.
Yeah, and it's an important point because if you think about, for example, what potentially could happen this year, if we only think that we rely pretty much very heavily on the mineralization piece, and we haven't got much on the fertilizer as we were supposed to be, many of the high-yielding corn, it might be potentially with a very high carbon nitrogen ratio.
Yep.
Very high. So, I mean, it could go like to 60, 70. So, I mean, in extreme situations, I mean, you could have very poor nitrogen storage on those residues. So, and then that will complicate basically for next year because you are assuming that there might be some breakdown and some...
Yeah. All dependent on Mother Nature. So,
exactly.
you're just leaving it up to
exactly.
Mother. Yeah.
And I think that when someone, in fact, when we talk about this idea that someone is slightly over-applying and is a little bit of a crop insurance, sometimes you start seeing that some of these carbon nitrogen ratios are a little bit better. Also because the plant was a little bit in excess of nitrogen. And when the plant is in excess of nitrogen, the plant keeps taking up. And most of the times what it does is just using the stalks as a reservoir. So it's basically using that part of the plant basically as a, okay, if I have any problem after flowering, I can just tap into this and I can start pumping, everywhere, mainly to the grains, right? But if everything goes well, if my conditions, I mean, like in this year, if you were having an excess of nitrogen and the plant was, taking up a lot of nitrogen, your level of remobilization was probably not too high because you were capped by disease.
Yeah.
So and then you start seeing that the amount of nitrogen on those residues basically are a little bit higher in some situations. So, and it's something that we need to put some attention, because that will be something that if you are advising people for next year, I mean, looking at the amount of residue. And the other piece that we discussed with Sean early today, I mean, when we were talking about moving into soybeans then, that residue uniformity. We talk about carbon nitrogen residue many times about how quickly the nitrogen is available, but we never talk much about the distribution of that residue after the combine went through. And then, believe it or not, we have data showing that not at the same effect that corn, but plant uniformity for soybeans is still critical.
Yep.
I mean, the ability of the plant to compensate when you move from corn to soybean is amazing. I mean, we know that soybeans can branch, but we have some of the studies that when you are getting into low densities, we know some guys that they want to get to play with the top yield and want to get to maybe 100, They want to get to the low end of the seeding rates on soybeans. Then is when you start playing with fire there. Because you put less plants, and if you have residue, and if it's not really well distributed, then next year you're going to start seeing those problems, from this year.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's risky.
Andrew, transfer us to a conversation around digital ag.
Yeah, moving into this digital ag sector, learning about some of this cool stuff that you and your team are working on. How do you see, thinking in the future, maybe some of the stuff that you're already looking at, how do you see growers, agronomists, even other professors, scientists utilizing some of this new technology over the next few years?
That's a excellent question. I will give you the second star.
It was a decent question.
No, I mean, it's why I'm saying it's an excellent question is because some might think, oh, that's a standard format type of question. But when you ask to someone, I mean, at least in my case, I truly care about, being honest with my answers. I mean, as honest as possible and saying, one of the things I struggle to see with digital agriculture and also digitalization, and I don't know if you guys have the same, I would like to really see your feedback on this, is like many companies are really struggling with adding value to the digitalization. So when you start seeing what happens in the last couple of years, we have many companies that they came with digital ag tools, and man, has been a challenge or not? When you put that as a, I always put the example of this, movie. I will not do any advertisement, but movie app, that you pay $10 or $5. In the past, we were paying $100 for having like this cable and all these channels. Now you pay almost the same, but having 7 apps.
Yeah.
Right. And then you start wondering at some point, and because it happens in my family, and we start wondering, do I need this? How many times do I use this app? And it's a $10, it's a $15 per acre, $15 per month. So maybe I don't need this one. And I think that one of the things that I really talk to farmers, and I think that they are struggling today, even with the very thin margins. Digitalization. Do you need to pay for having access to your app? Is your app basically helping them to make money, or is it just helping them to be confident in the decision that they already took?
Well, and that's, so your point is really well received by me, because I feel like one of my jobs is to be the gatekeeper for all these people coming out trying to sell stuff to farmers. And the question that I really like to pose back, if it's a technology company specifically, is are you even talking to the right person? Is the farmer the target audience?
Yes.
So I think about companies that have products that fix problems. Should we actually be using some of these technologies to show a grower? Let's pick an easy one. This year, everything needed fungicide. A lot of years, not everything needs fungicide. Maybe the farmer shouldn't be paying X dollars an acre to determine that. Maybe the company selling fungicide should come out and say, "Hey, Mr. Farmer, based on this information, we can now give you a credible case that you should be using a technology like a fungicide." I think sometimes we want the farmer to pay for everything, and there's this whole supply chain in the middle that has an opportunity to say, maybe this tech would actually help us either prove the value of our product. A lot of times the progressive farmers go, yeah, but I'm already doing everything. I'm already pulling every lever, so what good is it going to do me to pay for that technology? I'd be curious, and I like this question that Andrew wrote. Going to give you a little credit here, bud.
An excellent question.
What changes do you see growers and agronomists making as this technology, becomes clearer and a lot more accurate? So thinking about like satellite imagery, where maybe we have regular insights into our fields, maybe even daily. What do you see us changing? What practical changes, I guess?
I always think that, and I say that to many people because I don't want people to get scared about using technology. So the worst that you can do, I think, when a new technology is coming out and you see that is technology that's going to be helping us to solve potential problems, is the worst that you can do is to be afraid of using it. And I think that the people that they go in that direction, basically, they don't try to embrace a little bit the change, is people that they're going to be in some situations, being left out, and then it's going to take longer for them to recover, to be there. If you think about what I believe what technology is going to be helping us, is at the end of the day, it's going to be helping us to become better agronomists. Because we are good agronomists today. I think that we are perfect. But sometimes, as I mentioned before, we are taking decisions based on our best experience, intuition, expertise, but without sometimes the backing up support of the data.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like being on investments, and then you are taking the decision just because I feel that this company is good. Mm-hmm. Or I feel that I have experience, I have 30 years of experience, and I know that this is going to be a hit target. Many of these guys are already using analytics, and they're looking at the data, and they're looking at the trends and saying, okay, we know. So I think that that's the first point. I think that becoming better agronomist, I think that it's going to help potentially from the retailer side or from the company side to be more efficient. Because I have only just one Andrew and one Sean. Mm-hmm. But I need to find a way to see how I can be better on using your time and be more efficient.
There's definitely only one Andrew. I can agree with that.
You get a sticker for that one.
You get a sticker for that one. So
there's only one Andrew.
So I think that the point of efficiency, I mean, and for example, when I talk to my friends doing scouting, the point of the idea of helping them to be, for example, if today they're doing 3 or 4 fields, can I help them to do 10, 12 fields? And maybe it's because now I have a pre-mapping or a drone or a satellite. You can talk about whatever you want to do as a pre-mapping, but then I'm telling them, they get the map and saying, you need to go here and here. Mm-hmm. So I don't need for you to just go around and and check the entire field. We just have these 2 potential problems in the field. Go these 2 locations, confirm, and then confirm, and you keep going to the next one. Mm-hmm. So I think it's helping you to be better as
efficiency.
Efficiency. Yeah. I mean, and also still with the limiting factor for all of us is time. Yeah. So I mean, and I think that we need to think about how data and technology is going to be helping us to hopefully be efficient. And then, as farmers are saying all the time, if I can spend a little more time with my family, mm-hmm. I will pay for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
Well and said. I think that all of us will do the same, right?
Well, and that we're not aimlessly walking around in fields, right? Because I mean, that's part of it. Is we talked about we make our money in this industry in volume. I don't think a lot of people pay for scouting services, or if they do, it's very minimal. So targeting scouting is really important.
Ignacio, are you looking at, or do you know of anybody looking at new, just spectral different bands, wavelengths? We have all these cameras that we're probably all used to. You look at NDVI and RGB and all that. Is there any new technology looking at new?
Many things. I mean, and believe me, not looking at a new, because with the hyperspectral now you will be open up, you can start looking at multiple ones, no? But I also say this, as I was telling to someone the other day, it's hard for a person or us to go from a very simple tool to a hyperspectral. So, and I say that because I say it's almost the same analogy that I used before of saying you just have a regular car and someone comes and saying, hey, here is, or you have this salary and then you got a lottery and now you have $10 million. Most likely when you see many of these case studies of people that they have no money and got the lottery, most of the times they don't even know what to do with the money. 2 years after, they don't have no money.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like the analogy on this is like, yes, we are looking at hyperspectral, but most of the times when we work, there is a professor here that has been developing a hyperspectral sensor that we are looking and checking on the data. It's a portable sensor. And then the way that I'm thinking most of the times when I'm looking at hyperspectral is I want to use that data to do something back, to build a multispectral sensor based on a hyperspectral. Why I'm doing that is because hyperspectral is really expensive, and if I'm thinking about having this accessing to retailers and farmers, it's going to be almost today or in 5 years impossible. So the way that I'm thinking is hyperspectral give me access to all the knowledge. So now I need to filter the knowledge and find a way that I can build a sensor that is tailored for nature. Uh-huh. But a sensor that will be less expensive.
Yeah, I got you. That's interesting.
And then the other thing that sometimes we tend to, there is another point that sometimes I think that we undermine the power that we have on the cell phones. So cell phones have super good RGB cameras. You have, in some of the cell phones, you have LiDAR.
That's
so
crazy.
Basically, so if you start thinking about the power that we have on the cell phones, I mean, and saying, what happens if I take pictures of, and what we're doing a project now that we are basically doing that. We are basically using a cell phone, and we are building digital twins of ears on corn, mainly because we start talking about this idea of, okay, let's start thinking about yield potential. Mm-hmm. How many times you want to know your yields, and you don't want to go and open husk and check on the kernel number, kernel weight, and you say, okay, I want to just get a rough number, and I need to keep going. I need to go to another field. But I want to just get a rough number. I want to look at the ear size. Okay. And for many of the things, you take a picture, and then we are collaborating with the university. So we are working with the School of Engineering and a professor in material science. And this is the beauty about having a very strong university in multiple aspects, that you can work with someone in material science that is not even connected to ag, but they build a data pipeline that we can infuse all the images coming from the field to that pipeline, and we just put a machine learning model, and then we're building an app that basically tells you where is the point that you collected the ears and the pictures, and it gives you like a 3D model of the ear, and it tells you what is the volume, the size, and then based on our algorithm, is telling a little bit about an idea of what will be the yield potential of that ear.
Wow, all off your phone, because
it's just thinking about. Sometimes it's going back to this idea of how we are merging the foundational concepts of plant physiology, Because if you go back, this idea is just a simple plant physiology concept of a volume of an object and just start connecting how many kernels are available on that object, and then saying, what is the potential?
I keep thinking about the connectivity of, not that long ago, if someone needed an expert's opinion, they would physically remove the plant. They would drive to an extension agronomist, and they'd hand you the plant, and they'd go, Ignacio, tell me what's going on right now. Yeah. And I keep thinking about just the rapid pace at which we will grow our knowledge base just because of the connectivity to all of the experts. What an impressive thing. So, Andrew, kind of thinking through just where we're at from a time standpoint, I guess like my question would be, so we've talked about nitrogen, we've talked about yield. What about so nutrient deficiency, identifying nutrient deficiency, identifying diseases. Is it that same technology probably is available in that capacity, right? So all of a sudden, can I walk through a field and go, oh, what's going on here? Yeah. How far away are we from that being a reality?
There is a professor also that we are collaborating here in botany and plant pathology. Christian Cruz, he's a professor that works in disease, and then what he's doing, basically, he has been doing this for several years. He's just studying the movement and disease and tar spot, and trying to understand basically what happens when it's coming in the field. And right now he's doing some projects that we're collaborating with, also using autonomy and taking pictures and analyzing those pictures for disease presence. And then with the main model, the main idea is to start building kind of alert systems. At some point you're going to get to a situation, as we discussed early in the podcast, that the autonomy is going to be helping us to kind of look at multiple things. It's not just an autonomy fully dedicated to nitrogen. The autonomy is driving the fields and helping us to say, what is a regular plant health? Do I have any disease presence? So you have a dashboard and saying, presence of disease, yes or no, insects, nitrogen, because, I think that we are getting to the point, and this might be in 5 or 10 years, but we should be looking at the entire plant health. And when we are talking about this, it's not just only nitrogen. So it's disease, and you could start monitoring with RGB. Sometimes we are not needing to go all the way to super sensitive. When we are trying to be more on the preventive side, so when we are looking at asymptomatic, I think Andrew was talking about this at the beginning. Remember that you say something that I would like to know before it happens.
Yeah.
So then you start talking about, okay, yes, I need to have a little bit more sophisticated sensors, or I need to look at hyperspectral bands or fluorescence. Some guys are looking at fluorescence in in reacting to some disease specifically. So, but when you're looking at being on top and scouting, most of the RGB is super effective. And yes, it's reactive, but if I can get early and detect it early, it's ready.
Yeah.
The thing that is kind of cool that I keep thinking about is when we try to offer reassurance to a grower. Let's say we're sitting and we're having a conversation, right? And they're fearful of, let's say, tar spot, right? Tar spot's something that everybody's experienced the last few years. You know, one of the reassurances we offer is like, hey, you know, Mr. Grower, literally because of this and because of the platform X, right, formerly Twitter, I know what's going on almost everywhere in the ag belt, like in real time. And so all I can think about is like the iteration was, we have a collective place that agronomy goes to communicate. Well, how much more powerful is it if instead of posting a stupid picture outside of a cornfield, that picture is going to one database, and all of a sudden that database is building a library of what's happening geographically. I mean, what a powerful day that would be. You think about the exponential potential of responsiveness to that, and I think about Darren talking about the industry isn't really built to respond, like moving active ingredients around, right? So maybe we bought the wrong fungicide that wasn't the most effective on southern rust. What if in 5 years, the major ag companies are monitoring that type of database and going, oh, we need this set of products in Illinois, right? And so all of a sudden alarms are getting triggered. Oh, we just hit a 20% threshold of southern rust. We need azoxystrobin products. And all of a sudden they're on a semi before the farmer's even calling the retailer saying, I need fungicide, right? I mean, there's some real power in that
monitoring
stuff.
the movement, I know.
But when you start thinking about some of these technologies, I think that one of the things that I also mentioned to many people is what Sean, you were just describing. That is not like, it's not something that is out of the war. I mean, it's not something that is impossible to do. It's not something that it hasn't been discovered yet.
Right.
I think that what it happens is that some of the most successful digital companies, sometimes they do things that they are simple, but they solve a big problem.
Yeah.
And sometimes we tend to think on digital ag on things that they are sometimes so futuristic that we cannot see what is the problem today currently.
Yeah.
And what you are describing is almost like a platform that data goes in and is being on communication, is georeferenced and set an alerts. And it's something that, why is it not available?
Well, it's interesting. So we were doing research trying to understand like the efficiency of Amazon, right? And Amazon is so incredibly efficient. And you're like, how on earth can they have the product I want and get it to me in the same day? And so I was actually in an Iowa State class, and they brought in a speaker that was talking about it. And they were saying, well, think about it. How does the Amazon warehouse down the road know what you need? Well, they have access to everybody's search browser, right? So all of a sudden, if you start triggering, right? So one, we're habitual creatures. We know a certain algorithm, right? But all of a sudden, if searches start revealing a certain trend in an area, before you probably even realize you're going to be interested in pickleball because all your neighbors are, all of a sudden they're going, ooh, we should put a bunch of product in this market or whatever. It's powerful stuff.
And this is also where the retailers can say, oh, I'm seeing that these farmers around the area are already asking or browsing for tar spot.
Yep.
I need to so these are things that for me, some of the companies or digital ag companies or solutions that are going to come to solve problems quickly now in the next, I would say now 5 years, are things that they are going to be providing solutions that they're already there, but no one put it together yet.
Yeah, for sure.
If we could talk for hours and hours.
We're gonna finish this podcast and we're gonna make a company.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Your wealth of knowledge is just super appreciated, and you know, I know our listeners and viewers will really appreciate this. We're going to stir a lot of conversations around nitrogen. I think I'm actually more excited to kind of pick the brain of some people around how they view some of this digital technology. Yes. We're certainly on the front side of it. As we prepare to wrap up, we asked you, what you are excited about in agriculture at the beginning of our science episode. At the end of our management episode, we like to ask the question, you've had a fascinating career and you've got a long ways to go. But as you think about the work that you've done so far, what really stands out to you as the thing that you have a lot of pride in, or you think, man, that was a really cool contribution?
There are a couple of things, many, and it's impressive to see how when you are building projects and you get things done, how things are all kind of coming together right now. So for me, it's something that is nice to see. I have been done some work on early season crop modeling, and then I have been done some work on nitrogen late season application. That was part of my PhD. I have done some work on these new nitrogen nutrition index metrics. And right now, just seeing how these all pieces are coming together is amazing. And I remember something that I always tell even to my students. When I was finishing high school, I was in between two kind of different branches of what to do. And the beauty, when I tell the story, is because I say to everyone, I was in between being an agronomist or being a computer scientist. Mm. And it's nice to see how life took me in the direction that now I'm able to almost combine both.
Yeah.
That I can talk to a computer scientist, the guy is showing me these digital twins and talking about how we can do this, and I'm like, man, I have him the best day of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love that. And I will say, on behalf of agriculture, we're really glad that you chose agronomy and are bringing that back together. Ignacio, you know that our show is called A Penny for Your Thoughts. I like to cash in my penny. And so, Andrew, we're going to give Andrew either a pass or fail grade when we're done with this.
1 star.
Or
maybe.
1 star.
No, we're going to go with 3 stars for both.
But Andrew, give me your key takeaways. This is going to be a wild one to try to synthesize.
This was an interesting one for me because I think we talked a lot about kind of new technology, but we'll get to the one thing that there was kind of an overarching theme that really stood out to me, and we'll get to that. But one thing that you touched on, we talked a lot about it. It's so complicated and hard to have conversations with growers about how much nitrogen to put on. You got to factor in the input costs.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're at, time, equipment. So it's so complicated. Then you factor in Mother Nature, and it just gets that much more complicated. And so there's a lot we don't know, but there's also a lot we know. And right, it comes down, farming just a big risk. And so you look at 2025 and some of the environmental conditions we've had the last few years. What really sticks out to me is just having the conversation around how do we reduce risk, right? And the number of 20, when we're putting on falling anhydrous, capturing 25% of that. And it's not the same, right? We're not losing 75%. But, you look at nutrient use efficiency and nitrogen use efficiency. And I think whether we want to or not, as we advance in increase yields, increase removal rates, some of these nutrients that we apply we're limited on them, right? So we're going to have to figure out how to be more efficient. On top of that, I think I talked to Sean a lot about this. At some point, our soils can only hold on to so much nitrogen. So whether you want to or not, we're going to have to start thinking about split applications. So thinking about how taking that 25% of your fall captured in, that's a pretty
staggering number.
That number stands out pretty well. So, I think with the year we had, we know we lost some nitrogen through leaching. We know we lost some nitrogen through denitrification. That's a whole nother level. Dr. Mike Castellano had some numbers that were just overwhelming. You look at the amount of nitrogen we lose into the atmosphere and the impact that has compared to just the carbon emissions and some of that stuff. We have a lot of room to improve, and so it's awesome having people like Ignacio do research on this and phenomenal lab doing this because it's something we need to figure out and something we need to get better at. The second one, it's pretty cool, thinking that you guys are working with NASA. How cool is that? You mentioned the NASA acres, and I think it's cool you give them shine some light on them. Yeah. And you mentioned her name. What was her name again?
Alisa Wheatcraft.
Yeah, and so just giving people like that, you alluded to it. It's the one thing that I've loved being part of agronomy and teaching at Iowa State. I got to see the shift of just people from town wanting to be a part of agronomy, more females wanting to be in agronomy, people that just don't know anything about farming wanting to be part of agronomy, and I think the more we have experiences like this, and again, NASA being part of agriculture, it's going to bring people into the crop
Absolutely.
production world that have nothing to do with it, but just think it's so cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the coolest things now versus even 10 years ago when it was cool to us, but maybe not as cool to people that don't see. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the world now, it's, what is it, 95 or even 98% of the people don't know where their food comes from and aren't involved. You know, I've heard some pretty staggering numbers, but it's all 95 to 98.5. And so the more we can get people introduced to this stuff, I think that's obviously better for our world, right? And then the one overarching theme to me, and I know you've learned some stuff, so I'm curious to see what you learned. One of the overarching things to me is, you know, I'm 44, and there are times where we have this conversation, you know, I tried that 10 years ago,
Right.
it didn't work, or, you know, I don't want to use this new technology because I'm used to doing it this way. And, you know, a good example for me is some of these tools to predict disease, right? You know, and weather, I just feel like weather's becoming so unpredictable. Why even bother looking at that stuff? But at some point, and I keep telling myself this because I got to remind myself I don't want to be that person that's stuck in their old ways. So keep looking at keep looking at these tools. Like I tell myself, keep looking at these tools. They will get it someday, and they've already improved them quite a bit. And I'm just reminded, listening to you, Ignacio, how the technology and listen to hyper, you know, you talk about hyperspectral imagery and all these different layers and wavelengths, bands that we can look at, and the satellites and how you're using them. You know, it just reminds me to remind our audience and everybody to continue to learn about this stuff, because whether you want to or not, it's going to help us get better at what we do. And so I think it's an important overarching theme that, no matter where you're at, no matter how uncomfortable you are with some of this technology, what it's doing, it's going to benefit us in a huge way, whether it's now or in 10 years.
Yeah.
I like it. Pass, fail.
Yeah. Pretty impressive. Very impressive.
Did you have any
Are
key
we
learnings? I
good?
mean, we talked a lot about nitrogen. There had to have been something that stood out to you.
I mean, you know, these are such fun days for me because it's learning about things that are both relevant today, but also, you know, painting a picture of what the future would be. And I would say my key takeaway, honestly, would be optimism. I think coming off of 2025, there's a lot of fatigue. There's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of headwinds, I think, in agriculture right now. But then you fast forward and think about the fact that the people that are just coming into high school right now or just going into undergrad, you know, they're going to be having conversations where they're pulling out their phone, talking to a grower and saying, hey, look at all of this data supporting where you're at with your nitrogen. And so I think for me, my key takeaway would be do everything you can as a grower, as an agronomist, as a researcher to remain optimistic. You know, I think we get worn out by early technology ideas that maybe are a little bit ahead of their time, but then to know you've got incredibly passionate people that are doing incredible research, and you think about the group of people you're talking about, some of those brilliant minds on planet Earth trying to solve the most complex issues. So at the same time, on October 29th of 2025, maybe we're backsliding a little bit on some nitrogen because of economics, but in 5 to 10 years, we could just be having a radically different conversation. So for me, that creates optimism, and it makes me want to draw back into, you know, continuing to be someone that's encouraging growers to think really progressively. And I think about what you and I have done with this show, you know, started as just trying to learn some really basic things. And now we're sitting on campus of Purdue talking to some of those brilliant minds. That should create optimism for people. You know, I really hope it does. And when we end our show, Ignacio, one of the things that we really want to do is express gratitude. And I think that's a cool segue because I think all of agriculture is guilty at times of getting very siloed, right? A normal farmer has a couple people that are their primary sources of information, and you know, small regional trends, and so just your passion and your energy, but then your willingness to share that with us and all of agriculture is just absolutely critical, because there's people have to lead, and passion has to be the fuel for that. So we're incredibly grateful for that, and the work that your entire team's doing, because I know you've got a lot of people that are doing that. So thank you for that. Thank you for taking a lot of time with us. We really appreciate that.
I appreciate.
It's been a ton of fun.
I mean, if I can say something, I appreciate you guys are doing an awesome job. So, not just to give you only compliments, but one of the things that I like is expose researchers so the farmers can get to know and people out there can get to know some of the work that we do. And then many they're going to be surprised to see that we are just regular people.
Yeah.
That we just care a lot for what is going on with farmers. We care a lot about to understand how we can help retailers to become better on using technology. And then it's going to take a lot of optimism. And thinking about the future generations that are coming to agriculture and how we can get more young people being attracted to ag, and really just, communicate that energy to young people to say ag is cool. You could work, on robotics, or you could work on with NASA, or you could work on so many opportunities in ag. And the problem that we are trying to solve is huge. No?
Yeah. And it's absolutely critical. It's absolutely critical. Food security is one of the most important things on planet Earth, and we play a huge role in that. So, guys, thank you so much. Been an awesome episode. Really appreciate you, Ignacio. Best of luck in your research. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ignacio.